Your thoughts, Mr. Taparia, from a supply stand, you have been into this space and you're trying to bring in those critical elements. So what are your thoughts? What could be the opportunity, and what could be the competitive advantage, or probably I think how you can support the overall momentum of EVs going forward? How NBC can contribute in future of mobility when it shifts probably from the traditional, say, ICE engine to the EVs. How well prepared your organization, and what are the new innovations and technologies you guys are taking in place?
Yeah, thank you, Amit. See, as far as opportunity is concerned, everybody knows that pollution and green technology is here to stay, and the government is pushing, all the governments globally or locally is pushing towards cleaner fuels, and therefore introduction of EV is very imminent. We all know that it is going to happen, and it's already started its journey, and therefore the opportunity for early starter is really great. Having said that, there's already a directive from the government that by 2030, at least 30% of the vehicles will be electric in the country. And that's a huge volume. And if as a component supplier, we look at that, then it's a very great opportunity to tie up with some of the bigger OEMs in this space. Having said that, obviously it brings a lot of challenges for a traditional company, component manufacturer like ours. If I talk about challenges, then obviously the first challenge is how do we actually, the current volumes of electric vehicle which are actually produced or manufactured in the country is still very minuscule. And any investments which go into establishing infrastructure for electric vehicle component manufacturing is quite huge. So with so less volume in the country and with so huge an investment, it's a big challenge for any component supplier. However, as NBC, because we were fortunate that bearing is a component which is still going to be used in electric vehicles. Although the volumes will come down, but still there will be huge requirement, and it's also the value addition which we are doing to the product. So what we did in NBC is to overcome this challenge and to grab this opportunity is we start engaging with global manufacturers along with the Indian manufacturers. So we already have a lot of partnership going with some leading OEMs globally as well as locally. Second important step which we did was to set up an infrastructure in place at our premises, which means setting up a separate team who looks after this electric vehicle space, which means a separate skill set involving mechatronics, involving high RPM applications, involving low noise challenge, and those kind of requirements which will be there for electric vehicle application. So far it has been a very good journey for us. We are still in the beginning stage. We have partnered with almost all the OEMs in India as well as overseas. And we also had experience with Indian Railways, which already have switched over to electric locos. Starting with diesel, they totally switched over to electric. So there already we had some experience. So all these experience and all this initiative has taken us to a very good level, and we are definitely a good part of Atmanirbhar India as far as the supply chain is concerned. So I will stop here at this, unless you have some other question.
Sure, Mr. Taparia. Mr. Taparia. So for you, I think there is an opportunity. Already 80% is localized. And I think further, of course, 80% localized and targeting another, say, 10 to 15% in coming years. So, of course, that gives a big head start to you, and with sizable numbers of 100,000 and 120,000 per month. I think this industry is definitely, kind of developing very, very faster than expectations, of course, that some analysts used to, kind of forecast and everything. So definitely, I think you need to, tighten your belts to support the industry. And just wanted to understand how well prepared are you to support those kind of, those test, I would say, critical components when it like motors and other elements that Tarun just talked about. So are you ready with those kind of future developments, and what kind of preparations you have to have that Atmanirbharta to the next step?
Oh, yeah, Amit, that's interesting observation. So one thing for sure is that two-wheeler is definitely catching up volumes day by day, and the acceptability in the market has been phenomenal. So from component manufacturers' point of view, the big change is that earlier there used to be 3 or 4 players who used to have the major portion of the market. You can name them like Hero, Honda, Bajaj, and TVS of the world. But in case of EV, it's a very different story. Of course, there are 3 or 4 big players, but completely new players, nothing to do with the traditional players. So it's opening up interesting dynamics in the market, which means a component supplier has to engage with different kind of OEMs, not only the big ICE manufacturers, but also the new startups and new EV. As far as I know, there are more than 40 registered startups who are trying to manufacture EVs. And so it's a very interesting phenomenon. And if you look at China, then they are more than 150 or 200 manufacturers of electric two-wheelers. So this is how the industry is shaping up. As far as NBC is concerned, we have already engaged with the two-wheelers, especially applications like motors, where the bearings go into the motors. And also we have developed very special sensor bearings, which is to do with electric sensing and keeping the observation of the engine of the motor and throwing up the data. That is a smart bearing which we have developed. So all those technologies are coming into picture. If we look at from perspective of component manufacturer, we have to have a balance because EV is, of course, gaining popularity day by day, but ICE is also growing. So you have to take care of both ICE and EV as a component manufacturer. And the requirement of EV is very severe in case of low noise, high RPMs, and high durability, and of course those requirement of smart components. So we have already, as a component manufacturer, we have already made an investment into setting up these facilities where, and of course it involves a lot of R&D efforts. So we have a separate department who is looking into these requirements of EV manufacturers. We have established, torque testing equipments, soundproof rooms to test sound analysis, and all those types of special rigs and testing validation facilities in our R&D center, which is helping us to develop the components. And as I said earlier, we are not only looking at the domestic, but we are also engaging with global players. So that is helping us to gain that critical volume which we require to manufacture these bearings on the lines. So for a manufacturer, for a component manufacturer, I think it's the optimization of integration between electric vehicle and ICE, and we have to be ready with small volumes, and as soon as the volume picks up, we have to be ready to scale it up. So that's what is the balance we are trying to create in NBC. And so far, we have been pretty successful. We have kept our investments not so high. We have tried to utilize the facilities, the manufacturing facilities which we are using for ICE. And so we have kept the investments at minimum so that we can be competitive and make sure that we are meeting the requirements of the EV industry. Plus, we have now, gone ahead with the Industry 4.0, which means a lot of digitization of all the operations, which will help us to, switch from ICE to EV and vice versa. So this flexibility is very, very important for a component manufacturer. And at NEI, we have been fortunate that bearings are the product which are used both in EV as well as ICE. And we are getting ready to, have both the facilities, because both technology will remain here for at least 10 years or more than that. So this is how we look at it from as a component supplier perspective.
Very interesting. So you are trying to balance out between the current and future. So good. Very, very interesting thing.